So that explains it. The ATO is not the higher authority. They just want to get rid of it.
Well, look, if it's the truth, it is the truth. Ultimately, I guess it comes down to what happens if you've got an ATO debt as a doctor.
So I've got some good news and I've got some better news, and I also have some bad news. Good news is, generally speaking, most medical services don't actually attract any GST. So that means that you're not actually paying goods and services tax on these medical services that you're providing. The better news is, the ATO is your friend. The ATO does not want to see you suffer. The bad news is,
what about the impacts of having unresolved ATO tax debt when they come and see you?
The truth is that it's a residential loan. The banks don't actually ask about it. But if it does sit, and let's say we use your tax returns and there's a ATO notice of assessment, but there's some tax owing there, they may ask you, like, I don't know if I should say some of those.
the government is a highly inefficient spender, so why are you contributing more to their pot? It's my favorite conversation. My profit and loss looks amazing, but my bank account is so empty. Why is my bank account so low compared to all these profits? It's because
What happens if you've got an ATO debt as a doctor, and say, for instance, you're 3 to 5 years into your business and you haven't actually done your best properly? What are the implications on being able to expand your business and grow from a debt perspective?
Okay, so I've got some good news and I've got some better news, and I also have some bad news. Good news is, generally speaking, most medical services don't actually attract any GST. So that means that you're not actually paying goods and services tax on these medical services that you're providing. Obviously, if you're selling special tools and things like, stretch boards and wobble planks and things like those will have GST, but they're very immaterial. So most doctors don't actually have too much BAS debt, but when you look into the details, they might be PAYG, which is a component of their payroll, and they might not be claiming all of their actual eligible purchases. But there are definitely people that end up with this accruing amount that keeps growing and growing and growing. The better news is, the ATO is your friend. The ATO does not want to see you suffer. ATO is not there to put you into jail. ATO is there to make sure that you and society benefit from the work that you're doing for the next 50, 60 years. Right? They want you to do well. They're not going to shut you down all because you misunderstood what to do, your old accountant didn't understand what they were doing, or you just missed a deadline because you were too busy working. ATO is going to help you. And the great news is, because you're consistently working, you do have the capacity to pay it off. You can set up a payment plan. You can have your tax agent have an arrangement. If all else fails, you could do something called a small business rollover, where the ATO will come in and assess what you're up to and help you negate certain debts and help you travel forward in a much better way. The bad news is, if you're going to do finance, remember the cost of finance. If someone's going to lend you $2 million to buy a commercial practice, and it's going to be a repayment of $12,000 a month, and it's going to be $3,000 a week. If you have to pay back BAS, which might be $600 a week, and you're not making enough to cover your BAS and your mortgage, your lender's probably going to say to you, hey, we want to give you this money, but your BAS payments are very expensive. You're not going to be able to service this if the CPI rates at the Reserve Bank increases. So a lot of the time you're going to be told, yes, you do have to settle this up front. I've never seen a finance deal go through where the ATO portal hasn't been requested. The banks always want to make sure that everything's true and correct and ready. But look, the good news is you can solve it. The better news is the ATO wants to help you solve it. And the bad news isn't actually such bad news, because you're going to be able to work it out as time goes by. It might not be this month, but wait a couple of months and you might be in a position where you easily can do all of these things. No one's going to say no to you because of the work that you do.
And Nathaniel, what about the impacts of having a unresolved ATO tax debt when they come and see you?
Yeah, so the truth is that if it's a residential loan, the banks don't actually ask about it. But if it does sit, and let's say we use your tax returns and there's a ATO notice of assessment, but there's some tax owing there, they may ask you, like, what are you going to do about that debt? So either you're going to pay it off before the loan is approved, or you have some type of savings available to cover that. In terms of tax debt, if the person is really stuck, there are like second or third tier lenders that will be willing to pay off the tax debt for you. But that can't be the main purpose of your loan. Maybe it could be part of other things, like we'll refinance at a lower rate and then pay off this tax debt. But typically, you do need to pay it off because it is a loan. There are repayments and there's like interest attached to it as well. So it's treated as a liability. But if you think about in terms of ranking, who the client owes first, the ATO will always be first. The lender will always be second. So like the bank wants you to pay the ATO because they want first dibs over your money if something goes wrong.
So that explains it.
That's the easy
The
way.
ATO is not the higher authority.
That's the truth.
They just want to get rid of it. That's
Yeah,
clever. Very
that's
smart.
the truth. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. On that capital stack, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I should say some of those things. That's
it's
the truth.
I love and respect them. God bless.
Yeah.
Well, look, if it's the truth, it is the truth.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I guess it comes down to the way in which people can get ahead in life, and some of these are little pitfalls that maybe haven't been considered.
So I think if we think about that from a like cash flow perspective in terms of tax I think should just be an expense, right? That you expense for. That now that you're making a profit, it's great that you're paying tax. It's better that the ATO is not giving you money back. Like you're making a profit. It's positive. It's great. But then how do you put that into your cash flow forecast and say, hey, every month I need to put some money away because this is going to go to tax. Because you want your business to grow, so you need to account for that tax over time. I think as a business owner, do you agree?
It's my favorite conversation.
Okay.
My profit and loss looks amazing, but my bank account is so empty.
Yeah.
Why is my bank account so low compared to all those profits? It's because the taxes and the BAS doesn't go through the profit and loss, it goes through the balance sheet. So the ultimate goal is not to manage your business by reviewing your profit and loss. Yes, it is the legal form of working out what your profit is, but it's not your cash flow. And I personally believe that cash flows for a starting business are far more important than a profit and loss, because you get to see every cent coming in and out. Use a nice simple tool like Xero. Xero is nice and easy. And now this will help you. You'll see where everything is going and what to do. It even shows your PAYG. It shows the superannuation. It shows the GST. Good news for a doctor, not really going to be paying GST. Bad news for a lawyer, going to be paying a lot of GST. Bad news for an engineer, you're going to be paying a lot of GST. And that's accountants.
So is that just like a reporting method on Xero?
GST is just your revenue. Yeah. And in Xero, you just click account and you say cash summary and you're done. Yeah. So the answer is you can get it quickly, but people need to use it. Because what you're talking about right now, successful businesses pay tax. They don't pay a lot of tax, but they pay tax. Yeah. And the tax is always after the profit. Yeah. So that means that you know you're making money. You know that you're saving. And you know that you're using tax optimization with your tax agents and accountants to get you to exactly the right point. Yeah. But you got to know that it's coming. And more importantly, have you ever seen a lender help someone that's got zero income?
No.
No tax to pay? No profitability?
I don't even let it go to the lender.
There is no
incentive
for me to, if I was a big bank, I wouldn't let someone build a $50 million skyscraper if they showed me that they haven't paid taxes in 10 years. There's no money. There's no profit. There's nothing. And that's not a smart thing to do. You got to use tax as a tool. It's a very good mechanism that helps you, society, and your business.
And quick one for you, Zander. Mindset around tax, because tax accountants love talking about tax, right? And I know that you're different.
Yeah.
I know that you are different, even though we're getting into the nitty gritty and I'm actually probing some of these questions that are not often asked. If tax is a conversation, you're talking to your accountant, and it is the whole reason why you're making a decision is for tax minimization, I guess you could say.
Optimization.
Optimization. It's not tax avoidance. It's illegal. Is that the wrong mindset to have?
It's actually funny. Sorry, you can avoid tax. You're not allowed to evade tax. Avoiding tax means you are entitled, under the eyes of God and the ATO, to structure your business to pay the least amount of tax physically possible. And in our company, it's a very simple thing. You have to pay the right tax. You don't have to pay too much tax. You don't have to pay too little, because that's wrong. You have to pay the right amount. And the right amount is determined based on the structure of your enterprise. It's based on your the rules and the policies that you're operating under. And it's based on the exact rules to the law of the Tax Act and all the different concessions that are available. But the reality is that there are over 100,000 pages of practice guidelines and technical analysis and ATO position papers. And if you had to go onto Dr. Google will take you to chat websites and community forums on the ATO that specify things down to the specific type of pastry and whether or not there's GST on it. There are details that you could never imagine. But the goal is to pay the right tax.
And what about making decisions for the sole purposes of tax when it might actually cost you more?
The famous JB Hi-Fi end of the year special. Come buy all of these random bullshit things before the 30th of June so that you can save money on your taxes. But if you didn't need it in the first place, why are you spending the money on it?
Yeah,
It's
there's this famous meme that I always see on social media with Carrie Packer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about that? Is it true or is it a fallacy?
The government is a highly inefficient spender, so why are you contributing more to their pot? Now, it's true and it's false at the same time because you don't know what they're all spending the money on. But, I mean, sometimes you take a look around and you question some of the statues that are being put up in the parks and whether or not they constitute art or not. But someone paid money for it. And then you find out about, big corporate infrastructure things that the government is sponsoring. Trains that balloon 9 times the original cost. Yes, you're supposed to contribute to society. But you cannot rely on the government workers to make the right decision every time. And you're responsible for your own finance at the end of the day. And you have a contract with the government in the country that you live in to pay tax. You just abide by that contract and your life is good.
So, a couple of other things, slight tangent or new direction. Who works for who? This is a conversation that I always get asked. When it comes to trust, who do you work for? Who do you work for? Who do I work for? And this is a question that obviously is about interests which are represented. So from Nathaniel, from your perspective, what is the difference between dealing directly with a bank versus dealing with an independent mortgage advisor or mortgage broker?
Yes, so there's probably a few differences, but the main difference would be choice. Like if you walk into a major bank, one of the four, you just get that one product, right? And you're working with an employee who's salaried, who's paid a salary. So typical issues that I find with SME clients is that they'll have a banker or someone that's assigned to them. And I did this, I was a banker. So the first thing I would say when I call a client or an existing client, I'm so sorry, no one has called you in the last year and your banking keeps changing all the time. But I would love to get to know you and really understand your position. Because I know that they would be upset already, because that's why I start with I'm sorry, I apologize, because the people change, and so you're going in there, you're dealing with someone, you're working with someone, you only get one choice, but sometimes you don't feel like that choice, you feel like something else. But as a broker, we're independent, we're paid a commission for introducing you to the lender, so we choose that product based on the best solution, the best fit for your situation.
And you only get paid if you succeed.
Yeah, that's right. And if we don't succeed, we don't get paid. So we want to give the client the best option, the best choice, and then we get paid an upfront and a trailing commission for the life of the loan, which makes it beneficial for us to just look after the client. So whether you go to the lender or you come to us, the rate is typically the same and the product's the same. So why would you choose a bank when you only have one choice when you can have many choices? That's the key difference. Yeah.
So you, in essence, you can compare the market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not through the website, but through us, the broker.
Yeah. I mean, that's and the difference between the website, for example, and you,
it's
is
not
that
a meerkat.
there's no meerkat involved, but also the fact that you are there on the other end of the phone and actually going to walk through it and explain some of the fishhooks that you might come into.
Yeah. The difference between a person who's paid just to sell something.
Yeah, that's right. And so, from an accountant's perspective, do accountants work for the ATO? Because this is a
sometimes
I
feel like I'm carrying the tax base of Australia on my shoulders. No, the accountant works as an intermediary between the client and the ATO. We're not there to ensure that the client is paying every damn cent to the ATO in terms of the rules, blah, blah, blah. Of course we are, but the whole goal is to make sure that a person's structure and their reporting and their tax returns are the most beneficial under the eyes of the law for them. And we work directly with the ATO to ensure compliance, because as a citizen in Australia, you are participating in this society, and therefore these are the rules. So the compliance stuff would be individual tax returns, your normal monthly, quarterly, BASs, IASs, whatever they might be, your annual financial statements. A lot of these things are effectively the backbone of the economy because this is where the schools come from. This is where the parks come from. These things we could talk about for forever. And the jurisdiction of tax and where it starts and where it ends is very, very difficult because I think there's something like 127 types of tax, of which I could name maybe 10 right now. But the reality is that I work for my client. My client does the best that they can in the best circumstances, take into account every single option. We get as much detail and data as we can to get them to the right position. And then we work with them in the ATO to ensure that everyone's happy. Sometimes the ATO might query something. They'll say, you spent $12,000 on painting. Is this truly a repair, or is this actually something relating to the capital base of the property? There might be lots of misunderstandings, and the ATO is not always right. They lose in court, but the clients aren't right all the time either. The clients can lose in court. It's very complicated. It's very nuanced. I know I'm talking a lot, but it comes down to we work for our clients, but we also have to make the ATO happy.
And I guess it's the same thing for lawyers too, right? So you've got lawyers on both sides of the transaction. I know that if I'm appointed on a property as a licensed real estate agent, then I have an obligation and a duty to make sure that I'm furthering the interests of the landlord. Now, the thing with that, though, there is a slight distinction. A landlord that's got a property that's, say, for instance, been sitting, or they are racking up huge amounts of rent that hasn't been paid, it might be in their best interests for me to suggest that they actually do a deal at a rate which is actually going to make the property move. So the thing is that there are nuances around, and you are actually able to find that win-win together. It doesn't always have to be an adversarial transaction. So in some instances, as an agent, I would suggest that getting a buyer's advocate or somebody that's a licensed real estate agent to act on behalf of you and represent your interests. An agent cannot work on both sides of the transaction, so it's really important that they're not collecting commission from both sides. And then the other thing is I also think that there's varying differences between people that you can talk to about property. Some of them are licensed. Some of them are marketeers.
Four corners, current affair.
Yeah, that's right. And so the thing is that you want to be dealing with trusted advisors that are actually under a regulatory framework, much like an accountant that's actually registered and a registered mortgage broker. It's one of those things where, unfortunately, the industry in real estate has got a bad name because of the conduct of certain individuals actually ruining it for everybody. But I think on the trust conversation, it's if you've come across somebody that you actually know and can build a relationship, and you know that they're going to do the right thing by you, whether it be through peer-to-peer referrals or having somebody actually say, look, I've actually spoken to this guy, and he's actually going to work really hard to get you a result, and he actually really cares about you as well as making sure that things work.
Look, Bryce, the reason why RX Property, Loan Lounge and Xeta know each other is because last year in October, you helped secure premises, practice, fit out, finance, and everything by working as a team. And now what's happened is here we are in March. It took 6 months to get here. 6 months later, we're actually finally having a proper sit down and a discussion.
I guess it's to round things off, it's about obviously trust. It's about knowing when and if you can take the plunge. It's about building that dream team around you, right? We've obviously touched on things around structures and obviously without getting into specific forms of advice, things like self-managed super funds or...
The 5 C's.
Yeah, the 5 C's, or making sure that, a credit redraw, was that what you were talking about? Where you
Equity release.
Equity release. Yeah, so I got that wrong, but hey, it's good to reinforce these things. When you are actually working together with the trusted team of advisors, you can actually potentially accelerate where you are. And I guess it just comes down to finding a team that are going to be responsible and making sure that they're not giving you advice which is contrary to what your interests are.